Today's first session, a conversation about what is and what isn't working in the future kitchen. We have three different perspectives that we're going to explore. I think it's a really valuable conversation to talk about, what successes we've had, but also what hasn't worked, because this isn't the first year of Smart Kitchen Summit. We've had actual products ship into the marketplace, and it's time to have a conversation about like what isn't and what isn't working. And so we're going to do that with a few different perspectives. I want to invite up first Nick Holzherr, who's the CEO of Whisk, which is now owned by Samsung Next. He's going to talk a little bit about experiences in the kitchen and the smart home. Come on up, Nick.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Nick. I'm the founder of Whisk. For those of you who've never heard of us before, we work with some of the biggest players in the food space. We call ourselves a food AI company that helps other businesses build smarter food experiences. What that actually means is players like Walmart use us to power features in their own apps, and Samsung have used us for a long time to power all of the applications for food in their connected kitchen, so like a personalized recipe app, meal planner, or shopping list app. So 6 months ago, we were acquired by Samsung Next. So I'm now part of Samsung, scaling Whisk, and also working across other food experiences for them. So I thought I'd talk today a little bit about the importance of experiences in the kitchen over things. And starting with why, we're seeing a 4 times increase in spending on experiences compared to spending on things. Now, when you look at why, one of the reasons is status shift. People are no longer getting status from buying expensive things and showing them off to people, like expensive watches or expensive hardware, but now getting more and more status from the experiences they have. And you see this when you go into most restaurants. People are taking photographs of their food. You see this when people are choosing their holiday destinations based on where you can get the best Instagram shot, and destinations even marketing themselves for how great that Instagram shot is that you can get in that location. A fun sort of example of this is the Museum of Ice Cream, which in New York, when it launched, you could buy tickets for $18. And essentially it's a museum just for ice cream, where they have objects that look like ice cream with vivid backgrounds, essentially a place for Instagrammers to take great selfies and great pictures. They sold out in 5 days, 300,000 tickets. When it moved to San Francisco, they were selling for $38 a ticket, and they sold out 6 months of the show in 90 minutes. So people are spending and are wanting these experiences over the things. So what does that look like in some of the leading businesses who are capitalizing on this? Firstly, we're seeing new business models outside of the kitchen, like Rent the Runway, where you rent your clothes rather than buy them, so you can wear them to the event and then send them back. You're looking at things like Airbnb, who are no longer just allowing you to rent someone else's home, but you can also buy experiences there where you can have a cooking class or a tour of a city. We're also seeing it in new product offerings from some of the big companies like Nike, where you can design your own shoes. So it's an experience which you can also collaborate with others on. And leaders like Williams-Sonoma, the famous US kitchen store, where rather than just go and buy your kitchen utensils there, you can also do cooking classes and experiences around that to bring customers into store. And the same is true in marketing. It's been true for longer in marketing. Players like Aldi selling the experience of driving, not the car and its features. So what does this look like in the kitchen? Firstly, we're seeing a very big change in how what a kitchen actually is. A kitchen used to be a place where you cook your food before you go to a dining room to eat it, and then over to a living room to socialize and have coffee. Today, those 3 rooms are becoming one. We're also seeing the furniture in these kitchens change because of that. So millennials install, about 49% of millennials install a kitchen island in the middle of their kitchen versus about 38% from previous generations. And people are collaborating much more. So men are cooking more often. They are cooking for longer when they do cook. Women, it's the opposite. They're cooking less. And people are collaborating on the shop. So it used to be that one person in the household did all the grocery shopping. Today, it's that multiple people actually collaborate. 75% of households call themselves shared shoppers. They're working together to complete the shopping task. So people are collaborating. Their kitchens are changing shape. And millennials are also spending a huge amount of time looking at recipe content. Millennials spend more time looking at recipe content than any previous generation. They're looking at online recipe sites, books, Instagram, YouTube. 1 in 4 millennials look at food hack videos on YouTube. But they're not able to turn much of that inspiration into action. People cook on average 7 to 9 recipes on repeat. Even though they're spending hours looking at new recipe content, almost none of it turns into an actual achievement in the kitchen, a change in, achieving what they aspire to cook. So when you look at the journey that users actually have to go through, it's not that surprising. When you take this journey from inspiration through to eating a meal and with cooking in the middle, what actually looks like is a very large gap between inspiration and cooking. And this is actually links very closely to my reason for founding Whisk in 2012, which is you find a recipe that you think you want to make. You try and find a time to actually make it in your schedule. You look at your pantry, see what you've got, figure out what you still need, go to the retailer, complete your shop, come home ready to cook, realize you've forgotten a bunch of ingredients, go back to your convenience store, go and buy them. And when you're finally ready to cook that amazing meal that's in your cookbook or online, what actually happens is most of the time it doesn't turn out anything like what you hoped it would. It's burnt, it's undercooked, it's missing ingredients, a whole bunch of different things are going wrong with it. So it's not surprising that 89% of millennials say they want to be better cooks, they want to learn how to do this better. Now, when you look at the pain points in actually trying to cook a recipe or cook a meal in the kitchen, it's tedious, it's time-consuming. Time-consuming things are terrible for millennials. They have very short attention spans, and it's difficult. And this is actually giving rise to entirely new industries in the food space. And 2 of them I wanted to touch on. Firstly, around meal kits. It's interesting how they started off a subscription, but now are much more something that you buy in retailers, because people didn't like the idea of receiving these boxes every single day or week. But then delivery has been a huge, much bigger trend, where multi-billion-dollar companies like DoorDash and Deliveroo have grown super fast and are actually changing how restaurants are laid out. So restaurants used to have one entrance. Many of them now have multiple, so that the delivery drivers can pick up the food in the back and don't have to clog up the front of the restaurant. The rise of dark kitchens, where people are cooking food in restaurants that you can't actually go into and sit down and order. They only do delivery. Many of these dark kitchens doing delivery for under multiple brands of restaurant. So what does this look like for the kitchen, for cooking? Because ultimately, 95% of millennials do cook weekly. When you ask them why, the research shows it's because A, they enjoy it, B, it's healthy, and C, it costs less. So what does this look like in the kitchen? Firstly, I think there's some exciting things happening in the hardware space, where players, Samsung, for example, have something called the Smart Flexi Dual Oven, where you can cook at 2 different temperatures or use just part of your oven if you want and use less energy. And players like Brava, Tavola, and June are allowing people to essentially cook in ways they couldn't before because they have these multi-purpose hardware units. In the software space, there's also some, I think, great innovations. That said, I think we do need to make sure that we focus on real user problems, like waste food, the time it takes, and the disconnected food journey, or helping people to achieve a better outcome. Now, the opportunity, I think, is by connecting hardware and software together, we can create new, better experiences for users and make those more convenient, which is really important to millennials. But I think there's 2 kind of areas where we're not doing as well as we could do, and I kind of wanted to touch on them. The first is around personalization. So we learned this the hard way about 4 or 5 years ago when we first started doing personalization for some of the health companies, where if you give someone a recommendation for a recipe that's the perfect calories for their health condition. It fits with all the other things they need for their health condition, and it fits their diet or their preferences. But if you miss just one of the other things, the whole recommendation is totally useless. So if you miss the amount of time it takes to cook, or if you miss they haven't got the equipment that they need to make that recipe, it doesn't matter what else you do, and if you get it 100% right, you spend all your time focusing on nutrition, the recommendation just won't be accepted by the user. The second area is going to this kind of disconnected journey. And if you look at the food journey, what people are using different players, they're using different devices, and they're doing this activity in different places. So the different players, most users use lots of different sources of inspiration for recipes, and there's no shortage of recipes out there. Most of our companies like Whisk index millions of recipes. Most people use multiple retailers. As much as big retailers wish that users only use them, the reality is most users use 4 or something in that kind of area. And IoT companies, although the executives at Samsung would love every user to have just Samsung kitted kitchens, the reality is it's usually a mix of different hardware providers. So how do you actually create this experience that's connected? We believe the industry needs to work together more to connect, allow a user to take a recipe from multiple different sources of recipe providers, use multiple retailers to purchase them, and then be able to use all the different devices in their kitchen. And if you can create that kind of seamless experience, you can also start to collect some really interesting data on the user. So if we know that a user is inspired by these recipes, but ends up buying this stuff, and then ends up cooking differently, that data can actually allow us to solve the first problem around inspiration as well. So this is something that we've been working on with our open food platform. What we have found is that when you connect the journey together, what happens is a user actually uses each of those different touch points more often, so you get higher engagement, and you could also make higher revenue, because ultimately, if a user is using your service, you can generate revenue from retail bounty fees or from CPG brand sponsored ad products, and then everyone wins. So I think the high-level thing that I think is really important for this space is we create experiences that are connected to each other, even though we are competitors at times. And if we do that, I think we will be able to drive higher user engagement, higher user usage, and ultimately revenue for all of us. And that's my point. Thanks.
Wanda, have a seat. Have a seat, man. So I think so much of why maybe a consumer, when they get an appliance, connected appliance in their house, maybe doesn't have quite the satisfaction or quite the engagement that the industry wants, are broken experiences where you talked about this kind of disconnected meal journey. To me, I look at it and I see like an industry value chain where like this part of the industry is not talking to this part of the industry, and this not talking to this part of the industry, and they're siloed off. And I think those fibers are starting to kind of connect, but I still feel like we're not there, and that's a core part of why we're having so many consumers who aren't necessarily happy or aren't engaging with products. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's happening is you've got people investing huge amounts of money building these sometimes great experiences on the actual device, but because it doesn't connect to a user's life in the right way, no one's actually using that functionality. I think another example is recipe content. Users, some of the companies spend a lot of money and effort on creating their own recipe content, and Samsung's included in this. We have our own recipe content at Samsung, but the reality is, do users really want to use just Samsung recipes? Right. And the answer is, I think, clearly no. So we need to be able to connect to look at what do users actually want, and then focus on that from the starting point.
And you came from a world where you were in a startup, kind of operating and building your own company, and then you went within the context of confines of a large company, and there are corporate goals and kind of priorities that basically probably pull and counterweight against a positive consumer experience, right? Because they want to hit revenue targets. There's competing fiefdoms within large companies. Can you be honest and say, is that what you're seeing when you went into Samsung? And not to knock Samsung. I think Samsung's like every other big appliance company. Do you see a lot of that?
Yeah, I think the initial reaction at the board or executive level is usually, oh, we should build our own siloed experience that, if someone hasn't bought an appliance, why should they benefit from all the software that we're building?
Right.
It's quite a natural reaction. But I think we're also at a point in the industry, I think at Samsung and I think other appliance manufacturers too, where they have seen that fail, where they build these siloed experiences, they don't work, people don't interact with them. Yes, they might still buy the appliance, but the data on the usage doesn't show that they use it. So actually learning that, that the connecting an experience together is what drives engagement, then will drive people to do that. And I think we're seeing that across every manufacturer, Samsung included, but also the other manufacturers, the big manufacturers in this room, I think are also doing that.
I'm curious if BSH Appliances is experiencing that. I've only had someone from BSH to come up and talk. We do. Mario Pieper, come on up next. Nick, why don't you move down? We're doing a little talk show format here. How you doing, man? So you are the Chief Digital Officer for BSH Appliances.
Yeah.
Responsible for brands like Bosch and such. And when I think of a large appliance company, I don't necessarily think of services, but I think that's something you think about every day. Just tell people a little bit about what you're trying to focus and build on within BSH.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for your presentation. I could, only subscribe to it, and what you explained about siloed structures, I would also completely agree on that one. So this is a speech for open us up as an appliance manufacturer, but open us all together and try to connect and collaborate. So when I look to our journey, I would also say we are kind of developing from selling appliances into delivering home experiences. And what we did is, or the journey we are taking is like a 4-step approach. So the first one was, and think from where we are coming from, manufacturing devices, metal, material, plastics, and stuff like that. No software involved, hardly no software involved. So first thing was kind of digitalizing the product, of course, and kind of the underlying processes. So first step, there's no way around that. This is what has to be done first to be kind of linked to the internet. We started with a journey around 2014, so 5 years. When did you find your Whisk? When was it?
About 2011, so it would have been about 9 years ago.
Right, 8 years. So we started 2014 with that, connecting our appliances. First step. The second step was using them as a platform to open up an ecosystem via SDK and API. We introduced that end of 2015. So end of 2015, we were the first home appliance manufacturer to have an SDK and API for their devices so that partners can play with it. We entered the market and already had like 13 partners across the globe. Don't forget, we are across the globe. We are not in one country. We are across the globe. 80 countries. We have 15 brands.
When did you enter the market with that, 2015 or 14?
Yeah. For early 15, right. We started with an oven and a dishwasher as a starting. Now we have everything in pretty much every country. And that was the second part. So opening up a little bit the ecosystem via SDK API. The third step that we already took in the last years was really boost the ecosystem and not wait only till companies like Whisk and others are coming up and opening their services to devices. It was also about delivering or building our own services because we saw that it's heavily in need. Right. There's a lack of experience for our end consumers. So we are boosting it. We build our own new businesses, services around our appliances on the one hand, and also we are heavily engaged in other companies. So Kitchen Stories was one of the engagement we acquired. Chefling here in the US was a second one because we saw that they have bits and pieces that we don't have, and we were probably never able to build in that fantastic way they did. And so ecosystem is building up. And
right.
Maybe, Mike, just to tell the story once. And the fourth step that we are already starting to, because I think this is what you have to consider, is that we are now opening up the kitchen towards, and you showed the picture, nice picture, opening up towards the home. We don't believe that the kitchen domain will stay itself. We don't believe, absolutely not. I mean, light, music are the first signs, and there will be more connections in the home between the domains of the home. So what we are doing next is explore what we can do with the home itself. So as a kitchen with a home, and we are working in Bosch. So as you know, BSH is a Bosch company. We are heavily investing now in a more like a home or residential approach to connect.
Accelerator?
Exactly, to connect more in the home and make relations in the home for our kitchen services.
Let me ask you though, you've done all this work, put out an SDK. You're now kind of bringing in third-party kind of innovators through Accelerator. If we look where we're at now with your appliances in the marketplace, are you achieving the levels of kind of engagement and kind of connect rates that you would be happy with, and then like ultimately revenue through services yet that you anticipated 3 or 4 years ago?
No.
Why is that?
Well, because we were dreaming.
Okay. So how have you
let's do a reality check on that one, because I think we can dream. Everybody can dream here. Also, Nick can dream about that. But I talked about a journey that happened in BSH, I think, in 5 years. And I expect that will be pretty much the same for Whirlpool, for Miele, for Samsung maybe. And a typical replacement cycle in the kitchen is 8 years. So if you think about that, what is the chance that you will have our new connected appliances in your home and have experienced what we developed already? Not too bad.
Yeah.
So, but I want to answer your question more concrete. I think what we saw, and we are now getting already in shortcomings and failures, so we did 2 really great ones, I guess. And the first one was, as a European company, we are based in Munich, we thought that Germany is the best place to start with connected appliances. Wow, big fuck up. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, probably Europe is the last place you want to start with connected appliances, if you want to start with connected appliances. I mean, we have like 80 countries around the world. We could have done it everywhere, but doing it in Germany, if you want to go the hard way, let's do it in Germany. So first one. And the second one, also the choice, maybe the choice you do with device you enter the market. Our first one, as I remember, was the dishwasher. It's a very emotional device. So if we see connection rates today, the highest ones I go with the coffee machine and with the oven. So why is that? Because these are emotional things. These are emotional things you can relate to, people love to work with, and there we can see exactly that positive engagement that we love to see with all the rest of it. So, but we're coming closer, Mike, and we want to come a long way, and we believe that we can take an orchestrator role in all of that, and we want to take that, but still take into consideration that we have to transform the company somewhere from hardware to hardware plus software and services, and this is our way, right?
I want to have a little time to talk to JoRa and then like have a conversation between the three of us. So I'm going to invite JoRa on up. Mario, if you can scoot on down. JoRa with Wired, come on up. How's it going, Joe? How you doing, man?
Very good. How are you? Spam socks. I like it.
So you write any articles lately?
Nothing. Not pretty quiet.
So I've often said JoRa is probably my favorite kitchen tech gadget reviewer. I love your stuff. If you guys don't read Joe's stuff in Wired, you should. And he gives real talk. And you wrote a post or an article, I think about a week or two ago, called "The Smart Kitchen is Stupid."
It's really stupid.
And I thought it was great. I agreed with a lot of what you said in terms of like where we are today. You started the article pointing out experience or certain areas that work in the home, like Netflix and Roku. Like these things are like connected and they work well. And I thought back and made me harken back to like 2005, 2006 when I was in the living room and I was trying to watch TV on Windows Media Center. Did anyone use Windows Media Center? This was an era when like Microsoft thought you should use your computer to watch television. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at, like in the kitchen. Like we're kind of just in that early gestation phase.
Right. The kitchen is so freighted, and so much of the rest of the home is not freighted. I have
What do you mean by freighted?
Freighted, I mean, I have no idea what brand of thermostat I have in my house. So when Nest comes in and makes a big splash and fixes the way you heat your home and saves you money, that's fantastic. Oh my gosh, Nest, that's fantastic. When you look at the stuff that we already have in our kitchen, though, a space where we have been a skill that we have been refining both in our homes and in professional kitchens for centuries, where we use products that we are so attached to. My mom's KitchenAid, my Wusthof knife, my cast iron pan, and you want us to change that in a spot that we already have a really good game. I think it's much harder.
But is anyone asking you to change a knife? Like, I haven't seen the connected knife out there.
But that's the thing, you don't need to.
Right, but I think that you can have these tools that are never going away. Like, no one's in a store saying you need to have a Bluetooth connected knife or a pan or even a refrigerator. Like, if I go to like an appliance retailer.
Samsung.
No, but if I go to a retailer today, there's like 20 models, and then the one at the end is like kind of the flashed out connected one. And if you want it, and right now part of the problem is I think the showroom guys don't know how to explain it. Like, you go there and they don't know what these are doing yet. So I think this is part of the disconnect. But to your point, I think you're right about traditions, and I think that these are things that have been built over time, especially like yesterday we had Sanjeev Kapoor on stage talking about cooking in India. And there's a space in a country where there's long-held traditions that I think are going to be really hard to change. But you see things like the Rodimatic that does one thing really well, and it's $1,000, and they've sold like 60,000 of these things. Now, that's not priced for India yet, but once it's down to $100, I guarantee you'll sell. And I'm not trying to make the case like we're going to have connected things everywhere, but I think that certain cases we will see more adoption as this stuff gets lower price and better.
I think there are really good, smart products out there. People like Joule, people like June, I like ThermoWorks has the smoke. It's just a thermometer which has
ThermoWorks. Okay.
ThermoWorks.
Okay.
The thermometer company, and they have a thermometer that has an amp, and that makes the thermometer better. But you can also do everything you need to do on the thermometer controls and leave your phone in your pocket.
So is it simplicity, like having something honed to like a very basic experience rather than like being a Swiss Army knife trying to do a lot of things? Or I think it's interesting also that you mentioned the Joule, and that was a really brave design choice, I thought, going with something that didn't have an interface. And you love interfaces. I know that. You love dials and
people
stuff.
like that. I don't.
No, but you love like physical interfaces.
Yes. I can't stand the idea of what it would do to our conversation if, I've got to pull out my phone. I've got to swipe past the message past my friend. I've got to do this. I've got to open the app. I've got to adjust things on the app when I can just go boop.
Yeah.
And we make the change that we need to, and I can keep talking to you. I can keep enjoying cooking with you. I can have a glass of wine in the kitchen with my wife. That's much more important to me than farting around on my phone.
So let me ask you, Nick, getting in the way of an experience by making things harder through technology, is that part of a failure that some of the industry has fallen prey to? That they may just want to, hey, let's add technology for technology's sake?
Yeah, I think so. I think that definitely I can relate to some of the things Joe said. I think using the technology in the place where it fits best. So I think voice, I know in your article you were a little bit negative on the voice applications, but I do think voice can be super powerful. I mean, I personally use voice every day in my kitchen to add things to my shopping list, to set timers to cook. And you can see a very clear path to that being adopted more broadly in lots of different appliances. The fridge, yes, it's an expensive, $3,500. It's come down a little bit since then, but $3,500 for a fridge with a screen on it. I get it. But you do then have an idea of what the inventory is in your fridge, and there is no then a special interface on your phone where you have to tap things in. It's then all just it's there very quickly to use in the kitchen without having to pull out your phone. I would also say that I think to your point around how early we are in this space, I agree with you. If you look at the microwave, when it came out in 1954, I think it was $3,000, which is about more than $20,000 in today's money. 15 years later, they'd only sold 40,000 devices. But then in the preceding 3 months, they sold up to 1 million, and then accelerate another 15 years in, and we now have 90% of U.S. households have a microwave. So I do think we're not quite at the microwave stage where it doesn't cost $20,000 for one of these things, but there is some way to go, absolutely. But I genuinely think the future is that. And if we as appliance manufacturers don't do it, what will happen is Amazon will do it, and we won't exist anymore.
I think what's interesting there, though, is that voice is a great example. Like, there are a couple things that it's fantastic for. I've got a handful of, like, chicken, botulism city on my fingers. Like, if I can say, hey, set a timer for X, that's fantastic. But there aren't a ton of applications for that yet. And I think sometimes people confuse me with being a technophobe, and I'm just waiting for stuff to come. And I definitely realize that we're in the early innings there.
I don't open my oven with Alexa either. I mean, yeah.
So our new oven is opening automatically, so you will love it, Mike.
Mario, I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this. I mean, I think oftentimes when we use the term, for example, smart kitchen, we're thinking push button on device. But I think when I think of it, it's a much broader conversation about oftentimes core cooking technologies. So yeah. I'd be interested about some of the things you are thinking of beyond just let's make something connected. An example might be like reinventing the microwave, to what Nick said, with precision heating, using RF cooking, for example. What are some of the areas you think could bring some interesting forward advances for consumers that they really could be excited about in the future beyond kind of what we're doing right now?
But I think we will see kind of every of these universal technologies that are emerging worldwide in every industry, also in the kitchen. So talking about AI, for example. If you take AI, it will help you choose your right recipe. It will help you to improve the let's say the cooking process according to your allergies and according to your intolerances that you might have. It will learn, or the devices will learn with the help of AI how to do the best stuff. For example, in an oven, so we have a learning oven that kind of learns with you how your duff is, and because not your duff will not be my duff because of the different ingredients you have, that you don't have the right amount of, and you're not cooking exactly after the recipe. So this is the reason why things get burned. And I think AI will help us. For example, robotic. If I think of robotic and think of my mother, for example, she's not able at all, probably in 1 or 2 years, to do everything by herself. So greatly, Nick helped her in shopping the right goods. And I think there will be somebody who will help her cook. And it necessarily it has to be a maid or a second person. So robotics has also a role in the future kitchen. And I can see that. Also, that's one more area, blockchain. You might say, well, is it relevant for us? Yes, no, it is. Because if you think that probably in some point in time we are no longer buying our appliances, but more or less leasing it or just taking them over from somebody else, taking refurbished ones, it will be very, very relevant to see where this oven is coming from and who are the owners and who is owning it and who has paid for it and stuff like that. So having a kind of support via blockchain. So I see that there is a lot of things to come, and I'm really curious on discovering them.
And I also think, I agree with AI, very, very much so. I'm obviously very biased, but I do also think, to your point, is technology often gets in the way. AI can actually help technology get out of the way. So it can predict what you want and then tell you, is this what you wanted? Oh, yes, it is. And actually, I think it'll help people achieve missions.
I was down in San Francisco just the other day, and I talked to my editor, and he was talking about his phone, and we were talking about how we deal with our notifications and whether or not our phone can tell us stuff, and he really appreciates the gentle nudge. So his bus is coming in 3 minutes. Like, there's a lot of technology that goes into knowing that he is going to go to the bus because it's a weekday, he only rides his bike on certain days, and he's probably going to go take the bus, and it just like bloop, and here's this little bit of information if you want. Bloop. Maybe your chicken is about to start burning. That's super helpful.
Yeah, sure. So when I look at, for example, you, Joe, in terms of your cooking profile versus someone who like Chris Albrecht, who wrote about the June, and he loves the June. If you're someone like you guys working on appliances and trying to make everyone happy, I feel like that's one of the hardest things that the appliance industry has to do, quite honestly, is there's someone like Joe who loves getting chicken on his fingers, and versus someone who just wants to push button and have food. You know what I mean? So is that part of the problem why maybe the industry is not making everyone happy because they're trying to like make everyone happy?
I think that's definitely a problem, a reason why we haven't maybe achieved what we could have achieved by now. It's because food is so personal and there's so many options in food. So when we started building our platform, we hired some PhDs and they were basically using natural language processing without machine learning, without deep learning, where they were coding rules. Today, and then literally, we had three PhD ex-professors writing this for about 3 or 4 years, and then within about 2-3 weeks, we managed to replace the entire work they'd done for 3 months for 3 years with some deep learning-based algorithms. You no longer have to code rules. The machine can figure everything else out if you just input the data, which is, I think, why, as manufacturers, we're all trying to get this data about the user so that we can create seamless experiences that do go out and move out the way, but manage to produce these magic bloops about the bus or whatever, or your chicken burning. But it used to be very hard. Today, with machine learning and AI, I think it is actually easier, or at least achievable, and I think we'll hopefully start to see some more positive experiences.
I think we can do something right now and don't have to wait for AI solving every kind of a problem. I think the first thing that we should all do, and Nick pointed it out already, is like the collaboration part and getting out of the silo. And I think this is a main challenge, to be open, to be honest. When we, for example, as a quick example, when we 2015 opened up our APIs, we had some companies who were able to engage with our ovens, with our simulators in 75 minutes, who were able to use our services in 75 minutes and show a really cool experience to an end consumer in that time. I think it was Drop. The colleagues are also here. But there were others who took more than half a year to use that API in their context. And there was not just one example, right? So it has to do with skills. It has to do with cooperation ready. I also remember times where we talked to other home appliance manufacturers to collaborate, to build the basic standard for the kitchen, knowing that the kitchen will not be the end of the road, but will be a good starting point because it's so emotional. And nobody jumped on that, really nobody. Everybody wants to build his own standards, his own services. And this is the reason, as you said, that Google and Amazon and so on has had the chance to take over. So there is the thing what we want to do. We want to cooperate, we want to be open, and we want to build an ecosystem that is meaningful for our end consumers, and we can profit all from them.
One of the things I like about the idea of connected appliances and software-driven appliances is like it negates the depreciation effect of driving a car off the lot. Like you drive a new car off the lot, like it's instantly worth $5,000 less, right? And in the past, because maybe it's different now with Tesla because they're adding features over there, with the connected kitchen, like if you look at like June or some of these others, like lo and behold, I wake up one day, I now have an air fryer, whereas yesterday I didn't have an air fryer, in the sense like there's new features. So to you, Joe, because I think you're a little more skeptical, do you think does that appeal to you, or does that just make things more complicated? Do you like the idea maybe if software can just provide more value through new features?
If it gets better as it goes, that's great. From the home cook's perspective, that's fantastic. If it can understand that Chris, for instance, has a specific skill set or maybe knows that it's Tuesday night and his kids have a game and he's going to be in a hurry, and they can push something toward him, hey, we've got a great recipe for quick Tuesday night nachos. That's fantastic. If it gets better, everybody wins.
To you, Mario, I don't think necessarily appliance manufacturers have been thinking this way, though. I don't think necessarily, maybe I think that's changing. I think they've had a hard time pulling it off probably in the past. It's maybe been a little bit of a clunky experience in terms of upgrading in the field. Are you guys and are others building out these capabilities to do over there and in the field upgrades to add true value through software upgrades?
Yeah, we do, but it takes time. It takes time, and we're trying things out. We're opening ourselves up. So what we basically do is not only innovating inside BSH, so we are also innovating kind of outside BSH. So we do two things to learn faster. The first thing is that we have built an BSH Future Home Accelerator, which is a partnership with Techstars, where we try to really engage with young companies and try to help them growing into or with our ecosystem. So really spend money, because we think it's not about chasing mosquitoes, it's about making light somehow, and our industry is not that VC financed as other industries are. And also learning from them a lot, so we learn a lot. And the second thing is that we have a thing that is called the BSH Startup Kitchen, where we are not talking about financing at all, but we're looking for leading startups and trying to engage with them, and not bringing money, but bringing revenue. And with this revenue, hopefully they get more financing, not from us, but from others. And sooner or later, we will have a bigger, larger ecosystem, hopefully fully full of VC money, and can really boost in all our efforts that transformation will bring us. Also going into areas that are strange for us today, like software development and all that stuff.
All right, I want to keep mindful of time, because I don't want to get behind at the beginning of the day. We're down to about 3 minutes. I'm going to give you, we're going in the speed round, guys. So I want to ask each of you, starting with you, Joe, what is not possible in the kitchen today that you think technology, or you would wish, if you could just wish anything, you had 3 wishes on a vase you can rub, and a genie popped out, and technology can make a product for you in the kitchen, what is it that you would want? Is there anything?
I like temperature control. I like precise temperature control, and I think we're starting to see some good examples of that, but more and better, more ubiquitous. I'd love to see the point where recipes say cook something to 325, put the pan on your stove and set it to 325, because my burner and your burner and his burner are all going to cook at 3 different versions of medium high. Something like that is a very achievable feeling goal.
I feel like I just opened the door to JoRa getting like 20 pitches over the next year with people offering that feature, so sorry, Joe. Write about my piece.
I'm welcome to that.
Mario?
Well, actually, as I'm not a big cook, because I don't have a time for it, the fridge is my main device. And we innovated in 2015 with 2 cameras in the fridge, not as a retrofit, but being in it. And till today, we haven't managed to get an appropriate computer vision or object recognition part behind that to really discover what is in the fridge, and therefore really come and order the things that are missing, and really help and assist you when you're looking for a cool beer in the evening or stuff like that. So, and divide between lactose-free milk and not lactose-free milk. This is really something I'm waiting for, and I think that will be a completely new and open space also for Nick, because then the fridge probably is able to order the things that are needed right directly in every way. So might be a nice lead.
Thanks. I think also building on that, I like to start with like what problems are users having, and when we speak to users, the thing we hear again and again and again is waste food is a really big problem for them. But actually, when you look at the data and all the solutions they're trying to use to solve this problem for themselves are not working, and they're not actually reducing their waste very much. So I would love to get to the point, and I think it's very achievable in the next couple of years, to the point where once you know what's in the fridge with a camera or by manual input, you can then start to give a user nudges about, hey, this thing's going off. Why don't you cook this recipe with it that we know you like already, because we know exactly what you like. So those kind of small nudges to help you solve a huge global problem of waste food, I think would be an amazing achievement for the industry.
I was going to throw in my 2 cents, and you stole my thunder, Nick, because I do think I'd love something that would just help. I get so much food waste guilt now, because I'm way more conscious of it. And when something goes bad in my fridge, I just feel so bad about it, especially if it's something like an animal died for. That's horrible guilt. So technology that just helps us tackle this food waste, I think there's a huge opportunity there. Plug for our session later in the day. We're talking about the waste-free kitchen, the Wise Kitchen, so FYI. So, but I want you guys to give these guys a big round of applause. This was great, a great conversation. Thank you, guys.